Thank you so much for joining us today because we are diving into a topic that's been on the minds of many, especially those who like to go outdoors in our community, the Dove's Landing Project. Joining us on the podcast today is Seth Hendler-Voss. He is the director of Prince William County Parks and Recreation. Seth has been at the forefront of this $10 million initiative since its approval in 2022, and he's here to share updates on its progress, address concerns about accessibility and usage, and give us a glimpse of what's next for this significant community project, a very large outdoor park that many probably don't even know that's there, but they soon will once this thing gets going. But before we get into that, we want to make sure that you are getting this podcast where you are. And so if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast server, thank you. If you're listening or watching to this podcast on YouTube, you know what to do. We ask you to click and like that, subscribe and like, and send us a comment there for the YouTube gods know that you like this local content and you want to see more of it in your feed. So we certainly appreciate that. And if you are an email person, you like reading the day's news, we love sending it to you for free. Go to our website, potomaclocalnews.com, and click on newsletter and sign up for our free daily newsletter where we send you the day's latest news, fun things to do, new restaurants, new fun things to do with your friends and family at no charge. Again, potomaclocalnews.com, and get that newsletter sent right to you. So Seth Hendler-Voss, Director of Prince William County Parks and Recreation, thanks so much for coming on today. This topic here of this Dove's Landing, we've been talking about this. I think the first time that I was out at Dove's Landing was in 2013, so well over 10 years ago, and a guy named Marty Noe, who some might remember from the Board of County Supervisors, had us out there. And he said, what should we do with this place? And you guys have come a long way from what should we do. You guys have plans in place. You held a meeting earlier this month about this, what is a very it's kind of in the middle of everything, but in its own secluded area just outside Manassas. So talk to us, what is Dove's Landing?
Sure. Well, first I want to thank you for having me on the show. Big fan of what you're doing. It's always great to see someone like you invested so much in the sort of the local news sphere. It's really important to provide the the stories that a lot of folks might otherwise miss if just tuning in and reading this sort of the national syndicated media stuff. And another shout out to Marty Noe. He really has been a huge advocate for the growth of Dove's Landing over the years, which started out as a about 188 acre parcel of tract of land, now has grown to over 300. So the park it's special in that it allows water access, which is a sort of a high sought after experience for Prince William County residents. Prince William County residents, they prioritize water access near the top of their priority list. And so this is a place where folks can get up close to the water. And the master plan starting in 2013 and carrying on to the 2022 master plan calls for kayak launches, so direct water access, so people can literally get on Lake Jackson. So that's a great attribute of the property. It has a nice biodiversity. You go out there and you can walk amongst the bluebells and the wild violets and the lady slippers. They have a fair amount of older growth trees in the southwestern part of the site. It has some marshland areas that we're hoping to open up for public access. And it's just a way to step out of a heavily developing environment and just get away and lost in nature. It's tremendous trail system out there, miles and miles of trail for biking, horseback riding, and for running and walking. So there's a lot to offer the sort of the passive use recreation enthusiast.
This whole park, that we'll call it a passive recreation area because that's what you called it, and that's kind of what it is. I think when people think of parks, they maybe think of fields and stadiums and lights, and this is certainly not what we have, or what I think might be planned for Dove's Landing. But it is sort of in the heart of the county because it's if you think about its location, it is just outside the city of Manassas. It is very near where the intersection of Prince William Parkway and Brentsville Road, which has just been redone. There's a new interchange there, and it sits just back off of Brentsville Road in that area. Has this always been envisioned for a recreation area, or how did it come to be? What was it before? Was it somebody's farm? Was it just a protected land? How did we get here?
Yeah, so it was farmland. In fact, like most of the county in the 1800s, we know that it was used for farming, and then it was slated for residential development in the 90s. There was going to be, I think 500 residential lots there. I think someone was telling me the other day that it was maybe slated for mobile homes, which makes sense when you hear that number, 500 lots. And I think the board may have rejected the rezoning, and then there was a lawsuit. And as part of the settlement, the county ended up purchasing some of the, I guess at that point it was all of the property, 188 acres at that time. And then it sat basically dormant for some time. And then in 2013, the board approved a master plan and a comp plan amendment to classify the property as parks and open space. And then in 2015, we opened it up for the public. So it's only been open to the public for about 10 years.
And you mentioned some of the things to do out there. I mean, there are walking trails, hiking trails. You can ride horses out there. You talk about water access, and just to be clear, the body of water out there is Lake Jackson, as you said, and yep. that lake is formed by the dam on the Occoquan River. And so now, and I'm confused. Is it the Occoquan River or the Cedar Run, or do we have both tributaries flowing through this area? Talk more about the water and the things that people want to get out there and do.
Sure. Yeah. So the Cedar Run River merges with the Broad Run River to create Lake Jackson. And it's called Lake Jackson because it's dammed up near 234 Dumfries Road. But it feels like a river when you're on it. But it doesn't really flow like a river. But it has the shape of a river. It's very circuitous and narrow. And then once you get past the dam, then it transitions into the Occoquan, and then ultimately feeds into the Occoquan Reservoir and gets larger as it gets closer to the town of Occoquan and to their dam over there. So it's a flat water environment, and it's enjoyed by the Lake Jackson community. A lot of folks have docks in the back of their lots. A lot of folks use the water for jet skiing and water skiing and motorized boating. A little bit of kayaking out there, but it's mainly motorized watercraft. And what we're hoping to do is to provide opportunities for the kayakers to go out there and non motorized watercraft to have access to that water.
Now, you just held a public meeting this month in January to talk about what the plans are for this area. There has been calls for public participation on the plan for the Dove's Landing, this passive use area, for years. What was that meeting like? What did you hear? What did you learn? What are some takeaways?
We had a nice turnout. It was over at the Pat White Center, which is off of Sudley Manor Road. And we held it there purposely because we are trying to draw a wide swath of of residents, because this, after all, is slated. It is a regional park, and it will. We hope that it will only grow to become more, more used by the region. It's actually we call it a natural resource park, but it's another way of saying a passive use park, and we call it natural resource park because of all the unique natural features to it. The project itself has been controversial, and some folks don't expect parks and recreation issues to be controversial, but they can be. And this particular project proposes increased access to basically an underutilized piece of park property. It's relatively unknown, and it's not very popular. Parking lot is usually empty or rarely half full. It takes a little bit of time to get down there if you can find it. It takes you about 10 minutes or so when you're exiting off 234 to get down there.
Yeah, like I never knew. I mean, a guy who grew up in Prince William County, I never knew, this area was there. And of course, I never had any reason to go back there. Of course, it was farmland before it was a passive use park. I imagine some of the controversy might be from people who may not want an increase in traffic right through their area. They may not want to see more cars coming down their street to get to Dove's Landing. They may not want to see more people walking on what might be their property from a hiker who may not know that that's private property, not public property that they're on.
Yeah, traffic is definitely a concern, and it's a healthy concern, and we understand where folks are coming from. There are deficiencies in the road width and condition, particularly down on Dove's Lane, which is an unimproved road. It's a gravel road that runs along the edge of the park. There are concerns now with that road, with the current level of traffic, both mainly the traffic from the residents, because this part of the road, Dove's Lane, is not accessed by park visitors because there is no public access to that side of the park. So, but even with the existing level of traffic from local residents, it's created a safety issue. And so we can understand the concern when we're talking about actually creating additional access and providing and welcoming visitors to drive down that road. So with every challenge, there's usually is a solution. We feel very confident that we can improve that portion of Dove's Lane to bring it up to a standard design. We're working with DOT.
What's that going to cost? I mean, obviously you get into the transportation, mobility talking now. And so what might that look like? I mean, as you said, it's a very small lane, and probably the last time I was there was, I can't remember if it was even a paved lane. It may have been a dirt lane when I was out there last time.
Yeah, it's gravel.
So what might this look like?
It'll very likely be a modest widening to provide two-way traffic without creating conflict between cars passing one another. The road needs to be improved arguably right now. Committed to improving it before we even open up additional access to the park. And in fact, the board approval of the project requires that this road be improved to mitigate those safety issues. But,
and it's important to point out that this is a neighbor. I mean, so we averted, as you said, 500 homes that could have went on to what is Dove's Landing today. But to get to the park, it is a neighborhood of homes. It's not a very dense neighborhood of homes. There are single family homes that align Bristow Road and Dove's Lane, and I don't know how many of them there are, but there's certainly, it's nothing in the neighborhood of say 100 or 200 homes. It's and they're older homes. I think they were probably built mid-century, in the 1900s. But just kind of setting the scene when I'm thinking about what's out there.
It's I would consider it, parts of it are especially off of Dove's Lane, very rural, large lots, sort of agriculture, has an agricultural feel to it. It's very forested though. And then And then there's more sort of, yeah, like it seems like sort of 1950s, 1960s sort of suburban development pattern, especially like on Smithfield and Bradley Forest, where you have a little bit more density. Some older, maybe mid-century homes, maybe a little bit, newer than that. Very beautiful homes, very beautiful environment, nice, a lot of mature shade trees. Very kind of it's a quiet neighborhood, and folks, that's why folks moved there, and they want to hold on to that feeling, and folks have said that almost verbatim. They like the lifestyle they have out there, and they want to keep it that way, and we completely understand that.
One of the things that I'm recalling of my time covering parks in the region is Crow's Nest Landing in Stafford County, which is a wildlife preserve, and it's a beautiful wildlife preserve. And there was a lot of hubbub made about it. Oh gosh, going, well, I hate to say this, nearly 20 years ago when it was founded, and I'm dating myself about how long I've been doing this. But while there was a lot of talk and how the use of that area, it remains a very small use area. It's a beautiful area. There's been a lot of resources put into it, and 20 years later, despite all of the press coverage and all of the talk that was, and the governors who visited there to herald the project, it's still, it is also located in a residential area with homes on large lots. And it seems we don't hear, we don't, at least I have not heard anybody sort of fighting with the kayakers who want to park in the small gravel parking lot which is about the only lot that was built there. So when you talk about, the number of people that you want to come use this park, or, we've talked about the uses, which, again, we're not fields, you're not having events here. What are we talking about in terms of visitors?
Yeah, so I believe that even with the additional amenities that we're going to be constructing on the property per the approved master plan, namely the kayak launch and some additional trails on the eastern part of the property, that the park's going to very likely remain quiet. And I think a lot of that is just because of how far off the beaten path it is. Nonetheless, we are designing the improvements, assuming a level of use that mirrors similar parks. So our engineer looked at other parks, particularly parks with water access to when they're developing their sort of traffic, assumptions. But you just never know. I was talking to someone after the meeting, the last public meeting, and he raised a good point. And he said that, as you have more options for people, then you avoid that sort of crowding, that crowding problem. And
yeah, so, I think you could think of, the one park that comes to mind is Leesylvania State Park in Woodbridge on a summer Saturday afternoon. You can't get in to that park, and that's a very different park than what you guys are talking about here at Dove's Landing. In terms of the improvements, you're gonna build it out to where it's safe two-way traffic. You're going to improve the street to get in there. Do we know cost yet? Do we know what it might cost, when the work could begin?
Yeah, we don't have the costs yet, but we'll have them once we get further through the design phase. Right now, we're working on a 35% design. We have about 10% design, and we had two very, very productive public meetings. I'm going to take all that information now and begin making adjustments and developing the design. It's probably going to take us until the spring before we have that process complete, and then we'll be able to estimate the cost for development. It's important to note that there's only I think about maybe $2 to $2.4 million available right now for for all of the master plan improvements, which is not enough. The master plan improvements we estimated would cost upwards of $10 million, and that was back in 2022.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a slow. This is going to be a slow, basically a slow implementation period. And it's going to begin with Sinclair Mill, which is on the other side of the lake from Dove's Landing, per the board's direction. And then once that park is opened and we're able to quantify basically the level of use, then the board will determine whether they feel comfortable with us moving over across the water to open up the eastern part of Dove's Landing. So it could be years and years before the Dove's Landing property is improved and public use expansion is realized.
This Sinclair Mill Park, if my memory serves, and we'll see if I get this right, was this proffered with a housing development that was approved a few years back?
Yes, Preserve at Long Branch.
That's it. Okay. And so this mill is an old working mill, and as part of the proffer agreement for the County Board of Supervisors to approve the rezoning to build homes, the developer essentially gave this piece of land over for park use. So, and clearly it's probably not the best piece of property in which to build anything, but you could probably get a nice outdoor walk-in or something on this. And so what it sounds like is this is sort of a litmus test to see how many people will come out to what sounds like Sinclair Park to open first nearby Dove's Landing, to see how many people you can pull to this part of the world and see how it goes and try it out from there.
That's the idea. And I think it demonstrates the board's sensitivity to the concerns of the neighbors there. It's a very unique way of handling a park development project, but I think I like it. It's us sort of very deliberately and judiciously sort of moving through the process to make sure that we're trying to bring everyone along with us and getting the buy-in necessary to make this project successful. And we can learn from what we're doing and make adjustments as we go. I'm hoping over time that more and more local residents will come to feel more comfortable with what's being proposed, and we'll be able to see how we're responding to the concerns and feel that their concerns have been addressed, at least to a large degree. And we can't please everybody, of course. That's impossible. And there are always going to be people who just flat out just don't want anything back there. They want to keep it as it is.
Yeah, I mean, they're called, I'm not disparaging anybody, but they're called NIMBYs, not in my backyard. And I'll be honest, I wouldn't have a job without them, because when they talk, we write, and you guys get up and talk before the board, and we write. I mean, it gives us something to write about. So let me ask you this. We talked about the uses for this place, and when you're thinking about uses, these passive uses, horseback riding, walking trails, kayaking, as you plan these parks, even other ones like Sinclair Mill and what you have coming down the pipe, have you been surprised by anything in terms of a request for something like, hey, we want more rock walls, or we want a rappelling course, or we figure out how we can skydive? Has something like, wow, that's new, that's interesting, I've never heard that before?
I'm trying to think. At one point, someone asked for a bike polo court, not at Sinclair Mill or Dove's Landing, but it was another park project. I forget which one. But yeah, most folks are asking for conventional things. It's been a little simpler for this particular project because we knew from the onset that we were going to limit the improvements to passive use. Now, the Sinclair Mill property and the Long Branch property that are coming over to us, they're both coming over to us. they're under, they are or will be under conservation easement. And so they're going to be, basically we're going to be restricted to what we can build on those properties. And Dove's Landing Park right now was just placed under a conservation easement recently approved by the board. So we started the process explaining to folks that we're not going to be looking at doing things like large playgrounds and large picnic areas or fields or anything like that. We try to get folks to think through the prism of passive uses like hiking and biking and non-motorized water sports, et cetera. And so folks are pretty tempered in what they asked for. And actually in Prince William County, a vast majority of the residents simply want hiking trails and open space, and those remain two of the most popular needs across the entire county. And so that's what this property provides for people.
I have to ask you about the indoor sports complex, shifting gears here, because you guys spent so much time on developing this idea and holding public meetings and getting feedback, and the board essentially they bought a really big piece of property in Woodbridge near where really no one lives, right? It's near the state's largest commuter lot. It's kind of just sits out there, and they purchased the property to study whether or not they were going to put something there, and that something could have been an indoor track facility that sort of got going back 5 or 6 years ago now, back in 2019 with the bond project. And I know it was a blow to many who play sports, who want to hold events. Even events like graduations and things like that. When we found out that there was not the appetite on the Board of County Supervisors to move forward that project. So after all the work that you guys put into, identifying what could be, where does that leave you? What happens next? Because I can't imagine the need for an indoor place to play goes away just because the board doesn't want to do that with this particular piece of property in Woodbridge.
Right. Yeah, we did spend a lot of time working on that project, and I want to thank all the residents who came out and stakeholders who come out and provide your input and support for that project. The project was listed in the master plan that was approved by the board, and it also comports with the comp plan policy goals. Namely creating new tourism product to draw more folks into the county. And right now the project has shifted over to more of a traditional economic development initiative until the Economic Development Office, which now includes tourism, is leading, and they're doing a very good job with it. And the board is now looking to take advantage of that piece of property to realize the small area plan and recruit looking at, I can't say too much about it because they're still kind of working out the details, but
yeah, I mean, I can tell you what we reported is that they spent $500,000 this week. I'm sorry, $250,000 to hire a consultant to come in and look and what they want to do there. So the dream of the indoor sports complex that many have asked for, and believe I can say this, many have asked for is, these are people who are on team sports, travel teams. They have emailed me, they have sent me letters to the editor, they have voiced their opinion.
They're gonna have to leave the county to access that now.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to continue leaving the county to access those facilities and bring their resources to those counties. And
so I mean, we're talking like Maryland, we're talking Virginia Beach. I mean, these guys travel for these types of things. I mean, it's not like they're just going over to Fairfax or Fredericksburg. I mean, they're going, they could do more 100 miles or more to get to where they're going.
That's right. The demand for indoor space is going to grow here, and it's a tough issue because these projects are very, very expensive, and they don't recoup their costs in sort of in a traditional sort of cash accounting way. They in other words, the operating revenue that's brought in is, while it best case scenario could cover the expenses, maybe generate a little bit of profit, will never be enough to cover the debt service for the capital construction costs. And so it usually requires public subsidy.
And it's not like Prince William County and it is not already partners on something like this, like with the Freedom Center, partners with Manassas and George Mason University, like the Hilton Performing Arts Center. I mean, these sort of public-private, in this case, public-public partnerships. I mean, they've already been done, and so they're not. It's not a foreign thing for this county and the surrounding jurisdictions to partner up and do something like this. So one of the reasons, though, and I think the key reason was that the chair, DeShonda Jefferson, felt like there wasn't enough buy-in from a private investor, a private company to come in and do this. And so if we're one to step up and say, hey, listen, we were paying attention back when you guys were talking about this. And, we reviewed our numbers. I think we could make it work. I mean, are you able to just dust off those plans that you had and say, yeah, okay, let's talk? I mean, do you see a place? I mean, if it's not going to be in Woodbridge right off 95, is there another place in the county where that might work?
It's going to be very difficult. We spent years trying to find a site, and we were able to get that site, and we secured that site in part because of what we were proposing for that site. And we were fortunate to earn the cooperation of that property owner who at first had other plans. But it's a great piece of property, and now the county's in position to try to leverage that asset for bringing economic growth to the county. That may or may not include, recreation. We have heard suggestions that we should just put this, on a piece of county property somewhere else. The issue is that you need a large enough piece of property, and it has to be situated along a major transportation corridor, because if you can't provide easy access to the facility, and if you can't provide a location that is in close proximity to your dining establishments and your hotels, then you're at risk of not being able to generate the foot traffic that you need to meet your revenue goals. And so there's only so many places you can put a facility like this. And we were looking along 66, and we were looking along 95, and we found this property along 95. So if the county in the future wants to do a project like this, the land options are only going to get tighter and tighter and more expensive.
Hey man, you're doing a good job about putting a positive spin on it. I think you're towing the line. You're saying what you're supposed to say on this, but I imagine that this had to have been a blow. When it comes to all the work that you guys did, and it's so close, as I said, that piece of property they're looking at now, economic development, looking at putting something there. It's so close to that Horner Road commuter lot. Mm-hmm. And for a while there, we thought, well, because they were looking at putting the Washington Commanders there.
Yes.
And so for a while there, we were thinking, well, if people aren't using the commuter lot and slugging in and taking, going to the office because they're remote working now, maybe that's a brand new piece of property. But gosh, now, the president announced this week he wants all the, federal office workers back in their offices in DC.
Yeah, I mean, it puts those spots back at a premium again. But yeah, the vision for that interchange is to basically go to structured parking to create more real estate for other development uses. But you can imagine the cost of building a parking deck. But we also need VDOT's cooperation as well. And you're absolutely right, with people now going back into the office, it's going to be very challenging we're going to have to basically maintain access to that parking count without having a break, because people are going to need to park.
I refuse to leave this on a down note. So I want you to get us excited and tell us why we should be excited about what's coming up with Prince William County Parks and how people can get involved. What are some of the highlights that are coming up in 2025 that we can get excited about?
Well, the first thing to get excited about is our State of the Park event which is going to be just in a few weeks. It's going to be on February 13th at, well, it's still setting the time. I think it'll be around 6 o'clock, 6:30. And this is our third year doing that. It's going to be over at Forest Park High School in the auditorium. And we're going to talk about all of our, accomplishments from calendar year 2024, and talk about all the cool things that we have coming down the pike. We're positioned really, really well as a department. We have one of the largest park systems in the Commonwealth. We've got a very unique set of offerings. Our park system has everything from golf courses and water parks to equestrian trails and marinas and everything in between. The board has been very responsive to the need to improve existing assets, and so we've put an unprecedented amount of money into making our parks more accessible and replacing aging assets such as playgrounds in our parks. And I think as folks go out there and they visit our park system, they'll be pleasantly surprised to see how things are sort of looking new again. We're acquiring a lot of park space, the board and historic properties as well. And I think I got to pull up some of my notes, but going into next year, the board the board has approved purchase agreements for almost 200 acres of historic properties that we're going to be bringing online here in the next 12 months or so.
Yeah, and we're going to be covering a lot of that because we have a great relationship with the Office of Historic Preservation.
Yeah, they're
going
great.
back, and they're really into what they're doing, and they manage Ripon, and they've got a casino entrance right there at Williams Ordinary now, which is kind of weird. I don't know how much I'm digging on that, but the Ordinary is still there, and it's one of the oldest buildings in Prince William County in Northern Virginia. So at least that's intact. And I'll tell you what, man, I went to the first State of the Parks address in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you went around the office and threatened everybody, like, I'm going to take your office chair and you won't get it back unless you get everybody and your friends and your neighbors to come out, or what you did. Maybe your board got a lot of people out there, the Parks and Rec board, or the whoever did. I was impressed by the number of people who showed up to your first event. I couldn't make the second one, and so I'll be excited to see the third one and how it's progressing. But yeah,
I'd love to have you come out. It's a good event. We got a good turnout. Hopefully we get more. Yeah, kind of tie this back to the sports project and other projects in general. We have a very ambitious master plan. It calls for about $500 million worth of additional investment to achieve. And in order to do that, we're going to have to prioritize parks and recreation investment, and with a lot of other needs out there in the county, that's going to be a challenge, but it's going to take everyone working together and pooling resources and getting creative, and also speaking up about what they prioritize. And we have such a large base of park advocates in this county, and I want to see them get their voice. I think there are a lot of folks who do speak up, but for as large an advocacy base as we can, I think there are a fair amount of folks who, for whatever reason, are just not getting involved. But we have a challenge at our feet, and it was put there when that master plan and comp plan was approved. And I'm doing everything I can to find alternative revenue sources, leverage every dollar we get, to find matching dollars. But I'm also, one of my roles is just to try to motivate motivate the community, to get active, come out, volunteer, pitch in, and be the change that we all that we all want to see. So that's one of the reasons why the state of the park is so important, is it gives people an opportunity to come out and sort of celebrate with one another and derive some sort of motivation from all the successes to sort of propel them to get more involved going forward.
Seth Hendler-Voss is the director of Prince William County Parks and Recreation. Thanks so much for coming on today and talking to us about all of these things. There's a lot of moving parts in our discussion, just as there are many moving parts in your department and happening in this growing county of 500,000 people. But I think it was a very, very good conversation, very informative.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Keep doing great work, and I'll see you. Hopefully I see you in the parks.